Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJamz. Music and picture books. What a perfect sandwich.
Or good
Squish them all
afternoon or evening
together.
or whatever time of the
What
day
a
it is that
yummy
you are
snack.
joining us. We are glad that you are here. And I am here with Shannon Hitchcock, who is the author of a series of 4 books with Ray Craft that really detail some lives of some pretty amazing people in the Appalachian region, which is part of North Carolina, not just North Carolina, but Shannon and I both live in North Carolina, and we're part of the Appalachian region. So she has done some amazing picture book biographies. And so today we're going to be talking about one called She Sang for the Mountains. And it's the story of singer, songwriter, and activist Jean Ritchie. So you can see why it's a perfect fit for PBJMz. So thank you, Shannon, for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So glad you're here. So Shannon and I connected through a mutual writing friend, and we actually did a little conference together a few months ago, back in October, I believe. And that's when I became familiar with Shannon's other book of Words and Water, one of the other books in this series. And then we were talking, and she's like, "Oh, well, I have this musical one," because we were talking about PB Jams, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, you need to come here." So that's how it all started. And so here we are. And I'm excited to get to talk about this. Love mountain music, and excited to see the dulcimer featured in here a little bit. So let's just get to it, Shannon. What inspired you for this series and specifically this particular book?
Well, the series started because I grew up in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains and I went to Appalachian State University. I currently live in Asheville, so I love the mountains. I love mountain culture. It originally started because of this at that point was a manuscript called Saving Granddaddy Stories, Ray Hicks, the Voice of Appalachia. And Ray lived on Beech Mountain here in North Carolina. And when I was a senior at Appalachian State University, he was named a National Heritage Fellow by the National Endowment for the Arts. And so that was kind of a big deal at Appalachian, and I remembered that. And when I started writing for kids, I fell in love with picture book biographies. I had a son who was a nonfiction person. And so I wanted to write a book about Ray. So at that point, this was just a manuscript. And I was going to go to a retreat for nonfiction writers. And I felt like I needed to have more than one manuscript if I was going to go to this thing.
Mhm.
And at that point, I only had the one. So I started looking around for some other Appalachian person that might fit the bill. And I ran across this book called Singing Family of the Cumberlands by Jean Ritchie. And so Jean really wrote her autobiography.
Oh,
And if you are going to write a picture book biography and you can find somebody telling their story in their own words, that's like gold.
yeah.
And not only that, but she did a beautiful job. And she just used evocative mountain language.
Mm.
I could never do her justice because she was so talented on her own. But when I read this and I looked her up and I saw there was no picture book biographies about Jean, I thought, well, perhaps there could be a book too, and it would be about Jean. And so here she is.
Love
She
it.
sang for the mountains. And my wonderful illustrator, Sophie Page, made a mountain dulcimer.
Love it.
So it kind of came about because I wanted a book too and was going to a writer's conference.
Nice. It's funny how different inspirations come about in different ways. And sometimes we go looking for story ideas, and sometimes I kind of think they come looking for us, right?
Yes, and that's kind of what happened with Of Words and Water. I think she came looking for me.
Nice. That's a beautiful book too. This series is also lovely. Um, So yeah, if you guys haven't checked it out, not as this book, but the other books in the series too, they're all really worthwhile and lovely stories about really important people. And I love that you're sharing that with the next generation, really, right? So
That's
um
the goal.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, talk to us a little bit. Let's dig in a little bit more to the music. I know music plays a huge part in her life and in this story. So let's talk about some of the musical connections in this book.
Okay, so the seeds for Jean being a songwriter were really sown in her childhood. So if we go to this book, I mean, it starts out talking about how her family loved to sing. And music was an everyday part of their life. Like her mom would sing when she would churn butter. The kids worked in the cornfield and they would sing to entertain each other. And then after dinner at night, if it was in the winter, they'd sit around the fireplace and they would sing. And if it was in the summer, her dad would play the dulcimer and they'd be out on the front porch swinging and they would sing. But every night it was like a family musical concert. And these songs that they were singing had been passed down through their family for generations. They had been brought over from the British Isles by the first settlers to the Appalachian Mountains. And Jean's really credited with bringing those songs to a wider audience. Without her, most of them would be forgotten.
Love that. And so did you include any lyrics from any of those songs or any little nods, nudges to the songs in the writing?
I did. We got permission to quote from three of Jean's songs. And so the L&N Don't Stop Here Anymore, Cool of the Day, and Black Waters are all three, a verse is quoted in the lyrics, or a verse of the lyrics is quoted in three different places in the book.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Yeah. Um, so talk to us a little bit. Um, I know this book came to you through a different means, but do you have any musical background and how was that writing about music if you did or if you didn't, how do you feel like that impacted the book and the writing of it? Was it easier, harder?
Well, I am not a talented singer at all. Matter of fact, I always tell people that the best thing I can do for them is promise not to sing. And I do not play an instrument. Just really what drew me to Gene. I do love to listen to music. I'm actually going to a concert tonight.
Nice.
You know, living in Asheville, there's just a lot of opportunity to hear live music.
Yeah.
And so I do love music. But that said, it wasn't a challenge to write about it because what I was really going for was how Jean felt about it.
Mm.
And I didn't have to guess at all because in her autobiography, she told me, she told me how much it meant to her to sit around with her parents and sing. And, she really devoted her whole life to these songs. She was recorded by Alan Lomax for the Library of Congress.
Mhm.
She she had a Fulbright scholarship and went through the British Isles, tracing the origin of these stories.
Oh, wow.
And she wrote books on like how to play the mountain dulcimer.
Mm.
And so really her whole life was just, it was all about the music.
Yeah. Yeah, throughout this, you talk about how music was just everywhere. It was just like you said, a part of their daily life. And I think that's something we've kind of lost in this generation of these days. I mean, I know we have, serious music and Spotify and Pandora and all of that, but people making music, I think in the older communities and for sure in the mountain communities, I mean, music was such a huge part of their daily life, and that was just how they made it through their day. They sang, and I don't even think it was just for entertainment. Like, I think it was just their way of having relationship with the people around them, with the land that they were working. Like, it was really a lot about relationship. And I mean, I can speak to that a little bit just because not really mountain folk, but country folk. My family has very much been that. And it was funny, I was talking with my dad recently, and some of the fondest memories I have growing up are, we didn't travel very much because we didn't have a lot of money, but we would go visit my grandma and my uncle and my other uncle in Charlotte and in High Point, which is about, for those of you non-North Carolinians, it's about a 3-hour drive either way from where I am. And one of my fondest memories is we would just haul up in the station wagon and we would sing all the way there, and that's what we did. I mean, we sang all the old folk songs, we sang hymns, whatever. We just sang the whole way and the whole way back. And it was such a sweet memory. And it was funny because I didn't know until recently when I was talking to Daddy that the impetus for that was because the station wagon that we were driving didn't have a radio. And so I mean, but still, like, no matter where you were with my dad, you were singing because he loves to sing. And so if you're out in the farm fields and you're working with Daddy, you're singing. And he was a meat cutter, he's retired now, but he was a meat cutter for years, and they would always, kind of jab him a little bit because whoever came back there, like, he was always singing in the meat market. And I just think that's how people, you know, that's just how you get through your day. If you're happy, you sing about it. If you're sad, you sing about it. If whatever it is that you're dealing with, it comes out in song, either somebody else's song, or like sometimes in Jean's case and in my dad's case, you write your own to express what you're feeling.
Well, that was one thing that struck me about both Ray Hicks and Jean Ritchie is that their families, didn't have television, and early on didn't have radios. And so that's the way they entertained themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and they did it while they worked. They did it in their downtime. But if you're unplugged from all of those things, it really gives your own creativity a chance to shine.
Yeah, I was just reading a quote recently that was talking about that in order for creativity to thrive, there has to be quiet. There has to be quiet. Not that it has to be quiet all the time. Some people write to music or, different things, but you have to have quiet time in order for your creativity to come forth and really thrive. You have to have that downtime.
I firmly believe that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, when people use this book, Sheena, maybe as parents are reading it to their kids or teachers reading it with their classroom of children, or maybe just people reading it on their own, what is one, or maybe there's more than one, thing that you really hope that they don't miss? Or if they're reading it to kids, one thing that you really hope they'll notice and point out and share with the people they're reading it with?
I hope they'll notice that Jean was using her songwriting ability and her voice to speak up for taking care of the mountains.
Mhm.
Because coal mining, in some cases, especially mountaintop removal, where they were blowing the tops off mountains, it used to hurt Jean. She would say, "Look at what we've done to these poor mountains." And she wrote about it. She spoke up. So I think we have to speak up when we see things that are wrong, and use whatever talent we have to point that out. And we have to take care of the earth. It's the only one we've got.
Yeah, I think at least in the books of yours that I'm familiar with, that's kind of a running theme. You had Wilma Dykeman of Words and Water, talking about really caring for the water and the rivers. And so I think that's a great legacy to stand on and say, I wrote books about taking care of the planet that we live on because I think that's super important. Um, It's the only one we have.
Yes.
It's the only
And
one we have. And when we don't take care of it and when it's gone, it's gone and there's nothing else to be done. There's, not another one to take its place. So it's really important that we do take care of those big old blessings that we have in this earth that we live in and the planet that we share.
well, last week I did 2 school visits here in Asheville, and we were talking about this book of Words and Water that you just mentioned. And I was telling them that, like, back in the 1950s, Wilma was talking about river pollution and the need to clean up our rivers, and how that is more true today than ever because, we just had the hurricane.
Right.
So right now our rivers need cleaning up in a major way. And I just said, it's a problem that's never going to go away. We're always going to need to take care of the river. We're always going to need to clean up the river, whether it's after storms or because of, inconsiderate people or, or companies that don't follow good environmental practices. But the river is always going to need to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same is true of the mountains. I mean, people view it as a tourist destination, but it's so much more than that. So much of what we have comes down to us from the mountains. And so if we don't take care of them, then it's going to affect, that literal trickle down theory, is going to affect everybody else as well.
I think the best thing that ever happened to the North Carolina mountains is that we didn't discover coal,
Mm,
because, they have just been ravaged in places like Kentucky.
yeah, West Virginia. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that environmental piece is very, very important, and we hope that you guys as teachers and parents and families are definitely going to take note of that piece of this work. Is there any before, so I do have one last question for you, but before we move to that, is there anything that you wish I had asked or anything that you want to make sure that you communicate about this book?
Well, I would like to say that the entire series is illustrated by Sophie Page. She is a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design, and she crafts her images in 2 and 3 dimension using paper, clay, fabric, and wire. So her books are really like a big folk art project. And I would love it if some art teachers actually, kind of use the books as inspiration and, let the kids go wild and make some art projects.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous. The art is absolutely gorgeous. It's lovely. You have the book there in front of you. Can you hold up find maybe your favorite page or spread and see if
Yeah,
you can
hang on.
hold it
Let
up
me
to
see
the
if I can,
camera?
let me flip to it. But I mean, I have several that I love,
Of course.
but I love this one.
Oh, that's funny. That's the one I'm looking at on my screen right now too. I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that big dulcimer. I
Yeah.
really
And
think
then
she,
there's all the flowers in the background
yeah, and the
and then
hands.
yeah, the
Yeah,
bridge,
I
the
just think
Statue of Liberty.
yes, I think she did. Yes. And,
Yeah.
you got the Brooklyn Bridge,
Yeah.
and she just did a masterful job. And
Yeah.
then in Saving Granddaddy's Stories, there's one that I really love too. It's like I could go on about the artwork in these books for uh, a long, long time. But let me see if I can find that one. Here it is. So she
Oh
used a
yeah.
map of the United States as kind of the background.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's got, the banjo and the guitar and a fiddle and, and a mountain dulcimer. And so all of these people, because Ray's family not only told stories, they also, played music as well.
Okay, so there's another musical connection. Yeah. That one is called Saving Granddad Stories. Granddaddy.
Granddaddy Stories, Ray Hicks, the voice of Appalachia. He is
Yeah.
from Beach Mountain.
Yeah. Love it. Love it.
So they really are beautiful, beautiful books. I can't take credit for anything to do with the artwork. That's the amazing Sophie Page.
But your art of the words is lovely as well. They're very lyrical and very beautiful in how you speak about these folks in their early lives and how they came to love what they love. But there is I mean that's another musical element that we haven't really talked about, and that is the musicality of your writing, which is definitely there and definitely something that I think as music teachers, we can certainly point out to our kids and our students, but not just that, for other kids that are just interested in music or interested in writing lyrically and musically. That's it's really important. So these are great mentor texts if anybody's interested in adding lyricism, because Shannon really does a masterful job of bringing beautiful lyrical language to the text, and it's just as lovely as the artwork is.
Well,
Which
I'll
is
tell you this, I read these books out loud to myself many, many, many times as I'm writing them. And the whole reason is because I want to catch the rhythm.
right.
I can hear how I want them to sound. And so
Mm,
I catch when a word is off. I'm like, no, that doesn't make for
flow.
a good read aloud. That
Yeah.
word needs to go. I need something better. And so it really is kind of dissecting the text word by word and trying to make the language sing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, what beautiful books. Thank you for sharing them with us. Before we wrap up, though, I do want to ask you to share anything that you would like to share about what's coming up next, if you have books coming down the pipeline, or if there are events that are going to be coming up post air date that people might be interested in catching you at, or anything of that nature that you'd like to share.
Well, the next event I have, you and I are going to be at the North Carolina Reading Association conference,
Yep.
and you're going to moderate a panel that I'm on.
Yes. Excited to do
So
that again.
yeah, so that'll be fun. As for what I've got coming up next year, I also write middle grade novels. And next year I have the reissue of my first middle grade novel, which was called The Ballad of Jessie Pearl. They're going to reissue that with a new cover, and we're going to publish a sequel called Wild Mountain Ivy.
Love it.
And so the sequel is a ghost story. And it's set here in the mountains in Asheville. And it's about a girl who is spending her summer in a bed and breakfast that used to be a tuberculosis sanatorium. And
Wow.
there she encounters the ghost of a girl who lived in that room 100 years ago
Ooh.
during the
That gave me
tuberculosis.
chills, Shannon.
Yeah, during the tuberculosis pandemic. A ghost story is something I've never done before. So it was a challenge, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to come out. I'm not exactly sure of the date, although it'll be the spring of 26, and it's coming out from Learner.
Okay. Learner in spring of 26. Awesome. Well, yeah. So if anybody is coming to the North Carolina Reading Conference, it's March 23rd through the 25th in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There's still time for you to register. If you haven't registered yet, come on over and join Shannon and me and a couple of other authors, Carolyn Fraser and Lester Laminack. All fabulous authors. We're going to be chatting it up about their books and what it's like to be an author. So come and join us for that session. If you are there, if you're not and you want to register, then come on down and do that. We would love to see you. Shannon is a busy lady, so I'm assuming your activities are probably posted maybe on your website or your socials.
I usually put stuff up on Instagram.
Okay. So we'll link up her Instagram below. So make sure you follow her there if you're interested in connecting with her personally and talking more about some of the other books in this series or her other novels that she has. And so lots of great things coming. Every time I turn around, I'm seeing good news about Shannon and where she's headed. In fact, of Words and Water, we should mention was just, it's not the book we're talking about today, but it is a lovely book. And it was just a finalist. Is that right, Shannon?
Yeah, they haven't announced the winner yet, so fingers crossed. The winners will be announced in June, but it's a finalist for the Indie Forward award in the children's nonfiction category.
So exciting. So exciting. So awards happening and events and school visits. And in fact, Shannon is offering as a giveaway for this episode, she is offering a Zoom school visit. So if you would like for her to Zoom into your classroom and talk about Appalachia or any of the books you've heard her mention today, or any of the others that she has available, then feel free to, of course, reach out to her anyway. But if you would like to win a Zoom visit with her, then just leave a comment on the blog below. If you happen to be catching this on YouTube, comments there don't count. So make sure you go over to the blog and leave a comment there, and we'll enter you in a drawing. But Shannon would love to come and do a school visit for you live and in person or via Zoom as well. So just reach out to her for rates, and she would love to talk more about any of these beautiful, beautiful books, words and pictures and ideas and thoughts and all the things. People, just everything about them is lovely. So be sure to check all that out. We're going to link all of that down below. If you can purchase your own copy of any of these books, I'll link that up. Shayna's going to share with us in the episode, in the written part, some writing tips. So if you're a writer, be sure to check that out. And as always, please make sure you review books. If you do happen to read any of Shannon's books, give her a review. Amazon, Goodreads, and Barnes & Noble are great places to do that. And I always remind you that word of mouth is the very best way to share books that you love and that you think somebody else is going to love. Give them as gifts. Point them out to people, share them via socials, any of that. And if they're not in your library, be sure to request them, either your school library or your public library. So I think that about does it for us for this episode. So thank you so much, Shannon, for being with us. And I look forward to seeing you very soon at the conference. And thank you guys for joining us. And we will see you next time on PBJamz.
PBJamz, songish books and bookish songs, tips for music teachers, interviews and book reviews, a little singing and dancing.